Mr. Kher, let me get both of you in on this conversation. You both talked about predictability, certainty, and so on and so forth. We're talking about giving the SME sector in this country a big push. And yet, we haven't clarified what our position is as far as e-commerce is concerned. Mr. Kant, let me start by asking you. B2B e-commerce is allowed. B2C e-commerce, grey area continues, despite the fact that you've had report after report, in fact several of them being produced by FICCI itself, several consultation papers on why it's good for the country, it's good for the Indian entrepreneur. You're forcing first generation Indian entrepreneurs to pick up their business and register themselves out of Singapore. You've got Amazon telling the US Securities and Exchange Commission that we're investing $2 billion in India, but we don't know what will come off it because of the laws. Why can't we clarify what our position is?
On e-commerce, what's so grey about it? Everything is absolutely clear. India allows B2B e-commerce. That's the way China grew. Alibaba is a story of B2B. 100% FDI in B2B is allowed. Jack Ma is a result of B2B business, and a conscious decision till now has been taken that we'll allow young Indian entrepreneurs to grow the B2B business in this country.
Mr. Kant, let me ask you this, and I'll ask all the secretaries this, because if you go to the Make in India website, one of the things that it talks about is a change in mindset. If I can just use the example of what we do as far as excise duty tinkering is concerned, and I don't know how many representatives of the auto industry are here, but the government of India seems to have this tendency to tinker with excise duties without truly understanding the implications for inventory that's sitting with companies, what actually happens. We're now staring at the possibility of the excise relief that was given to auto companies expiring on the 31st of December. We don't know whether it will, whether it won't, will it be extended to the budget? Why this mindset of causing this unnecessary uncertainty which plays havoc with business cases?
No, I totally agree with you that there has to be consistency, there has to be predictability, there has to be transparency, and one of the worst examples of this has been excise duty structures which have allowed inverted duty structures to happen, and that's been a major cause for manufacturing to get very severely impacted in this country because you've allowed exemptions in a number of cases and so on. So I think we need, as a country, we need to be very clear, and one of the key things, and I would really like to give credit to this government, that it's really focused on this very, very strongly, that you've got to get rid of paperwork, you've got to get rid of processes, you've got to get rid of acts, laws, everything, just scrap them and put everything online, converge, integrate departments, and that's really what's happening.
Defense Secretary, as Mr. Kant was pointing out, the defense sector is probably going to be the big area of opportunity, joint ventures, foreign direct investment, private investment, so on and so forth. The Land Acquisition Act, and the fact of the matter is that everybody talks about how cumbersome it is, how complicated it is from the industry to the government, yet the amendments are not being moved in this session of Parliament. Maybe they will be moved in the next session of Parliament, we don't know. How critical is it going to be as an impediment, really, the Land Acquisition Act as far as the manufacturing dream is concerned?
No, generally I think the land acquisition law will have to be simplified. We are very much on that, and I'm sure the government is also working on that. So, there are two issues, the social issues and all the procedural issues. Now, I think everybody generally, there is a general consensus that you cannot tinker with the social issues because they are human and they have to be addressed appropriately. But as far as procedure is concerned, there are bottlenecks, and those bottlenecks have to be cleared.
Kumar Secretary, let me ask you about exports, because boosting exports is also one of the key objectives as far as Make in India is concerned. The 5-year foreign trade policy, sir, it was to be announced. There is no clarity on when you will announce it. This is to spell out our roadmap as far as the next 5 years is concerned. What's going on? I believe there again, you haven't been able to get your counterparts in the finance ministry on board as far as the foreign trade policy is concerned. Do we have to wait for the budget for you to announce the foreign trade policy?
Yeah, if I would have had the way, then I would have liked to see the foreign trade policy much earlier.
You're not getting your way, aren't you, sir?
No. It's not that. You have to understand. I have been saying this, that the foreign trade policy which will come out, for the first time will bring out a direction to our foreign trade. Today, what we call foreign trade policy is essentially a bunch of incentives that we offer.
Yeah.
And therefore, the direction has been completely missing. That is what will come out. Clearly, there are a whole lot of issues which relate to incentivization, which relate to various programs. And it is not something which the Department of Commerce by itself could have done. We are in consultation. I think we should be in a position to bring it out as early as we get the go-ahead from all stakeholders.
Okay, maybe the 1st of April, if you get your finance ministry colleagues on board. Any more clarity as far as the FTAs are concerned? Because we've been going back to the drawing board, trying to figure out our strategy as far as FTAs are concerned.
See, this discussion has to be premised in the context of the global economic situation. I mean, if you feel that exports would lead your manufacturing,
yeah.
I think we are slightly mistaken. In the present global situation, as Amitabh earlier mentioned, US and Africa are the only two economies which are showing an upward incline. Yeah. And you cannot base your an ambitious program like this entirely driven by your export potential. So clearly your impetus has to come from within.
Yeah.
But having said that, you spoke about FTAs. Clearly, and that is what exactly I said, the direction which will come in the foreign trade policy will clearly give you a perspective on how we want to stitch out all these FTAs.
Okay.
It is not, FTAs will not be driven by political or short-term consideration. They will be driven entirely recognizing India's competitiveness and India's long-term engagement with regions.
Okay.
And that is what we are going to do.
I want to pick up on what you just said, Commerce Secretary. And Amitabh Kant, let me ask you this, because Governor Rajan has put forward his idea of Make in India. He says, Make in India largely for India. I'm quoting him, I'm counselling against an export-led strategy that involves subsidizing exporters with cheap inputs as well as undervalues the exchange rate simply because it's unlikely to be as effective at this juncture. He is also cautioning against picking a particular sector such as manufacturing for encouragement simply because it's worked well for India, worked well for China. India is different and developing at a different time, and we should be agnostic about what will work. How will you respond to the comments that have come in from the RBI governor? Would it not make sense? Because that's what the Commerce Secretary seems to allude to as well.
I think Make in India is extremely inclusive. It is make for India. And when you make, you don't make only for India. You make also for exports. I mean, just to give you an example, Hyundai came into India to manufacture for the domestic market. But it today uses India as a springboard for export. It exports to 44% of its production to 123 countries across the world. And I don't think anyone here thinks in terms of manufacturing only for the domestic market. So Make in India is far more inclusive, number one. Number two, India's share in export market is just 1.7% of the global market. It's very important that India becomes competitive and gets a larger share of the export market. It's very difficult for India to drive its manufacturing till exports don't grow. Let's get that clear. Exports must grow at high rates. We must push for exports in a much bigger way so that manufacturing in India can grow. And to my mind, if your share in global market is so low, there's no need to spread export pessimism at all.
All right. Mr. Kant, Mr. Kher, Mr. Mohan Kumar and the Labour Secretary, appreciate all of you joining us here, giving us some very candid answers of what has been done, what needs to be done, what the challenges and the priorities are. And it's good to see the government speak in one voice at this point in time. And if all else fails, you can always blame the media. So thank you very much for joining us here today.